Good afternoon, good evening to wherever you are. Welcome to LeapChat number 3. Mike and I have been traveling a ton and doing a bunch of stuff, so we've missed a few LeapChats, but by popular demand back, and I'm glad that they've been of value so far, and what we want to do is make sure that we continue to do them on a regular basis. So we're going to keep playing with times. We have a ton of requests from Europe, a ton of requests from Australia. So we'll keep playing with times to try to, find the time that works best. And as we've talked about before, make the recording available and transcript available for those that, that can't join but want to get them afterwards. So we always start with some interaction. So for everyone on the line, go to your Q&A section and just type something. Type where you are, type what the weather's like where you are today, just so we can start to see who's on and get some interaction going. Sandra is here from Canada. Kathy is here from Irvine, California. Two different, I would say, temperatures. Oh, we've got Connecticut, Philadelphia, New York, Tulsa, Denver. Wow, multiple people from Colorado, Mike.
Got the Bay Area coming in.
Gotta love Minnesota, right? Minnesota at 40. Another Minnesota. Yes, too bad. A couple of our leapers live in Minnesota, and we got some reports of some chances of snow, oddly enough, in May. So for those people in Minnesota, sorry about that. Mike, what's it like in Massachusetts?
It is in and out the sun today, but in the upper 60s, so can't complain. Have opening day in Little League coming up this weekend, so looks like the weather's shaping up.
Dude, opening day, I think our playoffs are starting.
Yeah. We started playing, but unfortunately we don't have domes here in Massachusetts, so couldn't start at the same time as you guys in SoCal.
Multiple sides. So guys, we've got the Q&A question. Let's go ahead and move over to the chat from now on for our internal, just Mike, you don't like Mike's glasses comments, and we'll keep the Q&A open to the real questions about HR tech and HR and branding. So that takes us, I know Atlanta checks in lastly. So that takes us to our topic today, which is marketing. Marketing and HR, it continues to become a bigger and bigger issue, and every organization that we work with is struggling with it, I'd say. And I'd say there's lots of reasons that we're going to get to on the chat as to why they're struggling with it, but they're struggling in lots of different ways. So just to get a sense as to who's here, well, we have people piling in, and just like we in LeapChat tradition, those people that pile in late, we make them sing a song at the end of the LeapChat. So just kidding, you won't have to sing a song. But let's launch a poll. And the first poll I thought would be good is just to see where people are at. So grade the marketing capability of your HR and HR tech function today. So you look at HR and you look at HR tech today, what grade would you give your ability to market, the ability to tell stories, the ability to get people excited about using HR processes, HR tools, and things that face the workforce? Mike, while this voting is going on, what do you think?
What do I think the results will be, or?
No, just what do you think about the day? No, of course, what do you think about the results?
I'm optimistic today. I'm thinking we're in for a bouncing B. I say that with tongue in cheek, but I'm pulling for everyone here.
Good. Well, we have a few more people to vote. By the way, for those people that aren't voting, we're watching you. So this is not, no one's going to get back to you. No one's going to call you and say, why did you put a C when you're really a B and stuff like that. So make sure your vote gets registered. So Mike, just like you kind of predicted, it looks like the C's have it today.
Okay.
But close to the B's. So if we look at that, lots of improvement areas. A few people that are in the F's that are a little bit scary, but it's good. So let's talk about what it means. And I personally think, from what I see, and I'd love your thoughts on this, Mike, is that I think people overgrade themselves in this area. Your thoughts?
Well, it depends on the organization. I think marketing sometimes to apply an entire grade to such a broad set of qualitative and quantitative skills is kind of tough to do on the spot. But I think for those folks who may naturally think, well, we're good at attracting talent and using our employees, let's say, as brand ambassadors when doing things like campus recruiting, or we've got an employee referral program that really seems to have taken off when there's been concentration in marketing investments in one area of HR. Some folks might grade themselves more highly with that bias, when point in fact, after an employee is hired, the marketing efforts steered toward them from whether it's a learning and development perspective or an OD perspective or a performance management perspective. Maybe things don't quite live up to the expectations or the realities of the candidate once someone is hired and becomes an employee.
Yeah, and Mike, I mean, one of the things that we're doing a lot of right now is this concept around workforce experience and building visions and strategies for the workforce experience.
Yeah.
So when we think about the workforce experience, I mean, one of the things that I talk about a lot is that most of experience is marketing. Unfortunately, so many people think about workforce experience as just the user experience, or just the user interface, I should say, excuse me. And workforce experience is so much more than user interface. The user interface is just the piece of technology that we touch. But to truly create that workforce experience, it's a combination of branding and getting people excited and having processes that truly suck people in to make it not a transaction, but an interaction. There's so many things that make up that workforce experience where marketing is required, yet oftentimes we say that we look at the user interface of the solution and say that's what's going to create that experience. Any thoughts?
I totally agreed. In terms of the change in my own consulting style or toolkit, I should say, over the past couple of years, I've actually started, I would say, in a lot of ways, becoming more of a marketing consultant in a lot of ways than an HR consultant, just because that's where I've seen a lot of the common needs across clients that I've worked with. So trying to think about the workforce in different segments using tools like personas and journey maps. I was actually in New York yesterday, back in Boston today, but actually going through journey maps on some key HR processes from the standpoint of some folks in HR that are touching different processes like onboarding, departures and leaves and terminations, and going through those same journeys, if you will, from the standpoint of the person getting let go, potentially in the case of a departure, or the new contractor versus the new employee in the context of onboarding, and really trying to piece together from the current state what's working, what's not working, are we targeting people in the right way, and establishing who the personas even are before we get started down these journeys. So kind of what are the segments of the workforce that are of a critical enough volume to target and treat as a market segment, if you will, and then get into the individual process areas, much like someone would when planning campaigns for a particular product offering that they've got, or when they're entering a new market, and then using those findings after profiling these personas, their various experiences, and these the current forms of these journeys, which may have been designed 5-10 years ago, before then turning the page and saying, okay, for each of these personas, what can we now do to enhance these processes? So before we get into the process design, we're going through and actually segmenting the market, the internal market, if you will, in a much more granular way than I certainly did as a consultant, as little as 3 years ago.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think marketing it's been put into everything that we do now, because I mean, what I always say is that the HR departments of the past, they had to use the tools we gave them. It was their job. Like, we even rated them for a stupid performance management process on how they used the tools. Now we're pushing it out to the workforce, and they don't have to use them. If their manager tells them not to use them, or their leaders don't tell them not to use them, they don't have to. The other thing I think that's really interesting is I think that HR people are doing a bait and switch. And what I mean by that is most organizations I work with, I think that their career sites are better than their intranets and portals. I think their career sites are like, cool, come play ping pong, come drink beer, all this kind of stuff. But then their intranet and portals, that link farm, it's not fun. The brand doesn't carry over, and the culture we make on the career site isn't the culture that we bring forward into the company.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, have you seen that?
Absolutely. I think culture amplifier when it comes to the career site, and culture killer in some ways. Not only the link farm, if you will, but when it comes to kind of the content management behind the scenes, where I'd say marketing also has an edge over HR typically. You may do a search for something on an intranet and you're getting search results. You may get like 4,000 search results if you're looking for a PTO policy, let's say, and some of those search results are like 7 or 8 years old. So it's
I think we should. I think that bait and switch that I said it scared me, because as you know, you never know what I'm going to say. So I did a quick poll. Let's launch this. I want to see this. Is your intranet portal on par with your external career site? Like, which one's better? Your intranet or portal's better, or your career site's better? As far as sexiness, getting people excited, the same brand. Like, wow, because I look at that intranet portal, I want to keep working here. Or my career site is much sexier, much more attractive as far as what it is that I'm going to do.
Yeah, which is more human.
Yeah, exactly. So, wow, I love I love the comments coming. Someone just said it's on the wiki. Yeah, I love the comments. I love the comments coming in. And guys, in the chat, please chat. And if you want to chat to us, just say as panelists, or change the little blue button to everyone and let everyone see. As you know, or as some of you are watching, David and I were just chatting about the draft. But look at the poll. I actually am really happy that that 46% either say that their intranet and portal is either better or similar. That shows that the people on this web chat or this LeapChat are actually better than most organizations, because almost everywhere I go, the career site is either a bit better or a lot better than what they've built internally.
Yeah, I think we should have a follow-up here. How good is your career site? I'm a little skeptical. I think both of that.
Yeah, no, that would be interesting. But when it comes, Mike, to this whole concept of workforce experience and marketing, I think that the most important thing for HR people to realize is that who they're marketing to has changed. I mean, who they're marketing to and how they're marketing has changed. So, I made a note here that basically said, when we think about the people we're marketing to, the people we were trying to get to use employee self-service, something like stupid, like employee self-service and manager self-service, where it was a transaction. Mm-hmm. That's something I would use once a year. And from a marketing standpoint, how do I market in a way that's like, oh yeah, the one time a year you might use this, here's where it is. Now I'm asking people to interact with these tools all the time. And, if I go to my internet and portal, it should be nothing but a search bar, similar to a Google. Mm-hmm. And once I'm in there, how do I continue that marketing and branding? And I should have done another poll question, that says, how many different brands do you have in HR? Because you have a learning brand, do I have a benefits brand, do I have a performance brand, do I have a recruiting brand? I'd love you guys to type in the chat how many brands you have. If you have one brand for everything, say I have one brand, because everyone's going to call you. But if you have multiple brands, that's really, really hard. That's really, really hard for employees to truly know where to go for what, and how to do things. So whether it's my work as one brand, or whether it's my organization, or something cute, and sexy, like our one thing, we work here, like that, we need multiple. There's one person said one brand, two in the near future. 10 to 12 brands, many brands. Every employee should be able to get them in the elevator, do a 30-second cocktail napkin on, hey, this is where I go to find information about how to help me do my job better, period. And for you, marketing that out to people is a huge, huge part of the workforce experience. I think that the interesting thing about the person that said, it's on the, whatever, is that at least there's one place. maybe it's not branded the way it should be, but at least there's one place where I know where to go. Doesn't mean I can find it once I'm there, but at least there's one place to go. So I think that everyone's saying multiple brands. And if you think about it, I've been watching multiple brands on Amazon lately. And there's Amazon Fresh, there's Amazon Prime,
Right.
there's Amazon, but they're all called Amazon, and I'm part of this ecosystem called Amazon. It's a great example. I hope people agree. Tell us on the chat, can I do that same thing internally? So I have my work, maybe benefits, and my work, not HR, but something that's a language that makes sense to an employee who doesn't know how to spell HR. Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to change gears a little bit in terms of kind of the open search for things, which absolutely, it makes sense. I think another area where HR can borrow from recent marketing trends and, in doing so, maybe bring some of those capabilities into the function itself is in contextual advertising. So some of the transactions that, we engage with or the services that HR provides are really, episodic and not all that frequent. Even, something like a performance review. I mean, hopefully it's happening, the idea of feedback and ongoing coaching, hopefully that's happening on an ongoing basis. But for those where it's still very much, every 6 months, every year, or, something as infrequent as maybe dealing with a difficult employee situation, you're afraid of losing them, or, you're doing talent reviews every so often. And as a manager, you need to think through different situations in order to retain someone, keep them from going. These are things that just kind of come up sometimes, but in other instances, they're managed as a process by HR. And I think sometimes we get caught up in the process. Well, folks need to be trained on how to place people in the 9 box. So these are what the labels mean. And this is how to slide, this person from this box to that box, and then you submit and it goes to the next step, maybe for some approval or at least a review of some kind. But how about actually having some contextual job aids on how to really think through someone's performance or potential thoughtfully? And if you haven't done it well enough at that point yet, what steps you need to undertake before actually doing that placement. So it's more about really enabling, empowering people through marketing communications, and less so about these are the steps in the process, these are the dates that you have to hit in order to tick the box.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the other thing that's really important about it, Mike, tied to that, is that I need these people to do this stuff.
Yeah.
We need, when we put out employee self-service and manager self-service, or direct access as we like to call it, we're not doing it for our own good. We are, but we're not. We're putting it out there, but really what we want is we want people to use these tools because we need their data.
Yeah.
We need their data in order to do the rest of the strategic things we want to do in HR. We don't just need their data because we want to be able to process their transaction. That's one thing. But
Mm-hmm.
the rest of it is we need their data to do the job. So our marketing should be the value to you by putting this data in is X. I'm always fascinated that LinkedIn gets people to update their talent profile, but internally we can't get people to update their talent profile.
Right.
And the biggest reason is that when we do our marketing, we're not thinking about the value to them. So, one of the things, Mike, that's going on that a lot of people on the line I know are here for is they're in the middle of, everyone's doing constant implementations. I don't even ask the question anymore, are you in the middle of an implementation? Because think about how many times you update your apps on your phone every day, every other day. We are all in always on implementations, which means we need to always be on from a change, marketing, education standpoint. So when you think about that, we think about the old world of change management. So many times change management is only tied to a campaign. Like, we're going to go live with this.
Yeah.
But it's not thought of as an ongoing, perpetual thing. So, I'd love your thoughts on that. And then as you're making those comments, I want to get some questions going, you guys. So, we do these for you, not for us. Well, for us as well, because it's fun to talk about this. But type some questions like, who do you see owning this? Or, what type of marketing do you see work best? love to, based on the first 15 minutes here, get some questions. And for those that the person that just typed in there in change management, awesome. Talk about the value of change management and how you've seen it change, because we'd love to address that as well, Jake.
Yeah, and even in the context of not even a go live, sometimes I'm just thinking of the talent profile, Jason. Some organizations will roll it out because they're integrating a merger or a major acquisition, and they're looking to allocate people geographically by skill set in a way that's optimal to the organization, which is fine. I mean, there's a business purpose behind that, but then how are you leveraging that asset going forward from a career development perspective, or for the next merger or acquisition, which is somewhat unpredictable. I mean, so the idea here is when you've got an asset like that, if it's solely about the organization, it's never going to sustain itself.
Yep.
I think, the obvious benefit of LinkedIn is that, people are networking, people may be looking passively or actively. And, if the organization is providing as much potential value, as much promise as LinkedIn does, then people are going to use it. If it's simply about HR getting your data, as you put it, granted, we need it, but if there's a tangible benefit or promise of a benefit to the employee, to maybe even the contractor, we've started consulting with clients about talent marketplaces that are not just limited to employees, but involve contractors, involve alum coming back as contractors, and in some cases. So really think about it broadly and think about it from the standpoint, again, of those different personas, how you're targeting them, what's the best way to message to them in order to get them to transact.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. And the other thing that's funny, so I was looking at some of the chat that's coming in, someone said we're still in the old world, about to implement a new system, which will see us move to quarterly updates. Quarterly updates and a new system, that's the technology. Sorry, right. I got a little excited there, Mike. That's the technology. But when it comes to process and it comes to messaging, that shouldn't be quarterly. Like, whether you're in a new system or whether you're in an old system, whether you're not even rolling out any any technology, you need to be marketing what it is that you're doing, because that's what's driving culture. And by the way, that's what people are putting on Glassdoor about what it's like to work in your organization. If you tell someone 10 times in a month that you offer a great culture, your tools are easy to use, your processes are designed for them so they can do their job easier, and you tell them that, guess what they're going to put on Glassdoor? What I just said. If you tell them nothing, or you only market to them around system deployments or system upgrades or stuff like that, they're not going to see as what you're rolling out as an experience or a program. They're going to see it as a dumb piece of technology. And that's been the biggest issue with HR and human capital systems for decades, is we focus more on the technology than the impact of the technology on the people. So don't market the technology, market the impact of what you're doing on the people. And even for those people that are about to start deployments, that's the best time. Like, I always think about movie premieres. Like, if you're 12 months out or you're 8 months out, get the buzz going, because that's what's going to get people excited.
Yeah, I think a lot of this, again, I borrow from kind of the marketing realm, if you will. It's thinking through the different touch points you have with different segments of the workforce. So something that I know you've done, Jason, with clients, kind of taking it away from just the technology, is like, let's look at the placemat, the 12-month placemat, everything that HR is doing, both things that are cyclical, like open enrollments, to things that may come up, to things that are driven by management, like talent reviews, and think through, okay, what content, what communications do we need to make available to people at these different touch points in order to make them aware of what the benefits are to them that will drive some type of desire to actually partake in the transaction. Okay, I'm actually going to think through what my goals are. I'm going to think through what my career plan should be. Then to drive in terms of the system stuff, yeah, you do need to drive from a process perspective, how to get from point A to point B. It should be relatively simple. I mean, in terms of the technology, we're in a world now where, thankfully, a lot of consumer design is starting to find its way into HR workforce related software. And then the reinforcement after that, the fact, so that the next time it comes around, that the content is relevant at the point where a decision needs to be made. And the common thread or common denominator across every decision that HR is trying to drive is, do I need to do this, and what's the value to me? And that's really the point of any decision, even in the consumer world. I mean, it boils down to just that. And do I have the right content to A, communicate the benefits, and then B, support the person making the right decisions within the transaction itself?
Yeah, and I mean, Mike, and if my change management and marketing is all tied to system periods, like just the technology, that's going to draw people to the technology. So one of the reasons that people say our employee experience, our employee self-service sucks, or our manager self-service sucks, or things like that, is because the only thing we're doing is sending them to a site. We're not giving them context into how we're doing, why we're doing, and the overall impact to them of what it is we're doing. The other thing is that that concept, and I really love the chat going on. Marketing of employee self-service once a decade, like, you can't market anything once a decade. I mean, I understand that's what's happened in the past, but and there's another comment that we'll tie this into about the information overload. There's so much messaging going on. You want people to know that they have, just like your kids have Google. It sounds so weird to say, but just like your kids have Google, ask them a question. If you don't know the answer, what do? You Google it. My son's homesick today. I said, Ben, please make sure that you're working on your math, because I don't want you to fall behind in your math. He's like, okay, I'll go online, and then instead of watching the teacher teach, I'll find some videos. I'm like, where are you going to find those? He's like, oh, I'll just Google it. So he's looking at algebra, 6th grade algebra, online while he's homesick. Like, that's all they know is how to Google it. So we want our employees to know they have one place to go. And there's that cushion for them, no matter what situation they're in, they know. And it shouldn't be, I have to call. So, marketing the whole is great. And then when it comes to the once a year or once a decade type stuff, they know it's there and they're going to go look for it. But, there's a huge, huge message here that says, if I'm still training people on how to use the technology, my system's too hard, period. If I'm still training people, my system's too hard and they're not going to use it. So the question then is, how do I market to them to get them over the fact that my system might be difficult? Does that make sense? How do I market to them to get them over the effect? Just one quick story, Mike, I'll turn it over to you. I went to Russia about 8 weeks ago, and applying for your visa to go to Russia is the stupidest website I've ever seen. It is so bad. But guess what? The only way I could go to Russia was to go through this. And, they sold it to me. I was like, sorry, no other way to do it. We haven't done that in HR. We said, oh yeah, our user experience isn't good. We know, well, you can call, and we have, we'll give you a break and we can do this. Like, we need to get people understanding that we will continue to work on the user experience, but at the same time, we're not going to give them 19 different ways. That's what causes people to not use the tools. They say, oh yeah, well, we can still do it that way, or we'll still give you this way. We want one way to do things. We want tier 0, tier 1, tier 2 from a service delivery standpoint, and we need to market that to people to say, guys, that's not an if you're going to do that. It's a this is how you're going to do it.
Yeah. So to me, I think some of the training when it comes to the system or the process should be embedded in the tool. So you're still driving people to that one way of doing things. But if you think about the way you do searches on a topic, say you're researching, an article that you're going to write, which I know you do pretty frequently. Sometimes you can find yourself getting lost in the search. You're going to Google, but you're finding interesting things that are hopefully related to the topic. But at some point, you may find yourself, okay, I need to pull myself back to truly what my focus is. Maybe tie it to the outline I've started to develop. And I think that's HR's job too, when it comes to, as I mentioned earlier, in like the talent review example. If I'm being trained on anything at a process step and there's content to support me, is to support me in being better at doing what it is I'm there to do. Some processes are so simple you don't need it, but some processes do involve critical thought that, manager toolkit comes up, I think, in every new process design I suggest to a client. Okay, what are we actually doing to enable the manager here, which is absolutely the right call to be making when you're doing the process design. How are we actually going to enable the managers to do it? And oftentimes it's not, let's put up a manager toolkit, on the wiki, which is in itself a mini link farm. And maybe there's, some aspect of doing that and breaking down into categories, aspects of the manager toolkit, but there's also embedding some of those same assets in the process itself. So it's, similar to people that, are comfortable just doing broad searches, as I know you are, versus those folks that prefer to have things structured for them. They think in terms of parents and children, they're left-brained and so forth. So I think having the assets available through both a smart search, generally speaking, as well as when appropriate, embedded in the process, embedded in the technology itself, is absolutely the way to drive some of that adoption, which you should then be measuring and using to optimize how you do things going forward. I know we haven't really gotten into the concept of closed loop marketing yet. Not sure if it's the right time to turn the page if you have anything else to share on this, but just wanted to kind of plant the seeds, if you will, around analytics and so forth, which is a whole other area of marketing that we haven't gotten to yet.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, like one of the things that I think is interesting, and you can tell based on some of the chats that are coming in, and I think this one summarizes what I'm about to say perfectly. It's been in the HR organization for a while, and it's frustrating and disappointing that outside of the implementation itself, there's not a lot of funding allocated to marketing. And the interesting thing to me about that for everyone here is that we oftentimes don't ask. Like, have we asked and have we actually made that ask? We only ask for change management help during an implementation. We only ask for marketing support during an implementation. Because once we're live, then okay, cool. Then we're started. We don't need anything else. That's the biggest pile of bull possible right now. Like, once you're live, you need more. You need more in order to keep people excited and keep people interesting. So, I would say to the person that's frustrating and disappointing, A, the world has changed. B, our audience has changed drastically. So I truly have to, hey, Ryan, welcome. So we have to truly think differently. Another one of our leapers joined. And then 3, within every HR function, I need to have someone that's focused on marketing.
Yeah, I'd be curious to get some chatter going on that, whether or not from a staffing perspective, if folks in the audience, maybe some of them are HR marketers themselves, are playing a marketing function within HR. I would just love to see in the chat if there's been an uptick at all at your organization of either hiring people with marketing skills or cross-training existing folks to play kind of a marcom function within HR.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that it shouldn't be just tied to an implementation. It's not tied to a project. It's tied to an ongoing program. So first comment comes in, Mike, they work in government, environment, investment in people hasn't been on the top of list, but and that's, that happens in waves in organizations. But if we think about all of who has marketing in HR and is it working? I'd love to just say yes or no. Is it working or not working? Yeah, so I'm looking at some of the chats come in. Yeah, I mean, most organizations don't have marketing.
Yeah. That's consistent with other LeapChats we've done. We did one that was focused on skills and HR and some of the skills areas that we view as critical to being an HR function in the future of work. So if HR is going to survive, are we looking at, a function that's adapting to the times? And some of the skills that we discussed during that LeapChat were things like being able to still tell stories with data, to communicate change and benefits to the workforce. And across the board, the grading was pretty poor. So I think folks were a little less rosy than they were on some of the polls that we had here. Speaking of polls.
Yeah, I just launched one, Mike, because I think this is really interesting. So many times I work with organizations, and by the way, look at the way this poll is worded. Have I had an HR tech or process deployment that has been suboptimal? Because realize, you might not just be rolling out technology. Technology is not the only thing. The question is, am I rolling out processes? Processes need more marketing than technology itself. I should be marketing the process and marketing the value of the process, not marketing the technology. The technology is just there to support it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense to people. I should be marketing the process and what they need to be doing and the value to them, not just the tech. So there's going to be times that one of the things that drives me crazy, sorry, Mike, this is a little bit passionate for me, is when they're like, it's an IT project. So IT is not typically good at marketing. That's so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, that's not this rolling out tools that are workforce facing that tie to HR or processes is not an IT function.
Right.
IT is there to support it. It's not an IT function. And if it is an IT function, your deployment will fail.
Yeah. Regardless of the technology too, it's not like, if I'm using a piece of technology at an organization, it could be related to CRM, it could be a finance tool, it could be what I'm using for collaboration and email and such. I don't look at that and say, boy, our IT function sucks. I just say, this sucks. This experience sucks. And for every one of those interactions you have, every poor perception, that kind of adds up to the experience that you're having on the job. It's not like, years ago where people had somewhat of an understanding that IT was getting involved, because there was a lot more interactions between them and the workforce directly in terms of system updates and what the employee had to do and reaching out to the help desk. There's just less of that these days because of cloud technology and just better technology out there. So it becomes much more about, this is a crappy experience, not, boy, IT is really putting the wrong tools in front of us. And
it's really easy, guys, to make this hard. It's really easy to roll out tools without thinking about the marketing side of it. It's very, very easy. But if we look at the results of this poll, for those of you that are worried about you being the only ones, 94% said they have an HR tech or process deployment that's been suboptimal in the last 3 years because of lack of marketing. Like, that's huge.
Yeah.
So when we think about building our future, so it's crazy the number of Mike, as LeapGen, who's doing a lot of work in changing future of work and changing HR organizations, the number of organizational design discussions that we're in right now about how do you structure the future HR department, how do you structure the future HR workforce technology department is amazing, because a lot of people don't think about having marketing tied to these. One of the reasons I always say kill HRIS and change that name is because, to me, HRIS, of course it doesn't have marketing, but HR process and technology and thinking about the strategy around processes, that needs marketing. It can't be something that you borrow from corporate marketing once a month or once a quarter to help you with a newsletter. That won't work.
Yeah, agreed.
So if we look at some of the comments, no marketing, suboptimal. And one of the comments that came into suboptimal, it's related to talent management. Goal setting, performance reviews, feedback. My God, unlike employee self-service, that's the stuff they should be doing all the time. Talent management, which is goal setting, performance reviews, feedback, the way it's discussed here. Think about that. That's how many times do you ask your kid to tell you how they're doing at school, or ask how they're doing at school? Or how many do you get on scale once a year because someone told you it's a good thing to do? That's ongoing, real time, always on conversation that's needed, and marketing's where that starts.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes not where marketing starts today. In some cases, it's also not where the transaction is happening. So if I'm, HR and I want people to engage, and I'm trying to reinforce this concept of managers need to be having discussions with folks, how about pushing notifications to mobile devices? If you're trying to get a message across to a manager of a sales team or a marketing team, we're talking about that enough, who travels quite a bit, who maybe doesn't see their team on a day-to-day basis, at least, in 3D, they may be doing a lot of video calls with them and so forth. How are you actually getting to where the people are in order to get them to transact. And that's another thing that, from a marketing perspective in the consumer world, marketing is a lot better than HR is. I think if we were asked a polling question around that, it would a similar result, 94% would acknowledge, maybe even higher, that marketing is better at pushing useful messaging, content, timeliness, convenience in terms of location to where people are, than HR is.
Yep. Mike, there's another question that came in that I think is really interesting. And, as you know, we've been doing a lot of work around employee service delivery, HR service delivery. How do we deliver things to people? The question is how do you market employee or HR service delivery? And I want to jump on it, but I'm going to turn it to you. But I think it's an interesting discussion.
Well, you don't market it as HR service delivery.
I know. I'm assuming the person that asked it knows the answer to that. But it's interesting because, a lot of us do it, and then we say we're working on this HR service delivery stuff, and it's going to change your life and stuff like that. But that's it. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I guess, to senior leadership in the organization, you may want to position it that way. If it's HR, thinking, I guess I'm in the mindset of once every 10 years now after looking at some of these employee self-service comments. But if you are trying to change the perception of HR as a better consultant to the business, I can see maybe positioning things from an HR service delivery perspective. We are your performance consultants, where your employee bases or workforces, career consultancy, your talent agency. I mean, that I can see from a branding perspective, maybe tying to HR, but even in doing so, I've kind of gotten further and further away from using the HR function. So I think positioning service delivery with the workforce, regardless of level, is about what value you're providing at that particular time. So you may undertake a service delivery initiative where you're starting to move some transactional services to a shared center, and maybe rolling out some self-service, a knowledge base of some kind. Usually you can't do all that at once, so you have to pick your spots in terms of what you're focusing on. So start initiative by initiative. Open enrollment is a logical one. It's a logical place to start in terms of doing that. I mean, you want to get it right. Obviously, you can have high stakes there, but the idea being that you want to hit people not only in the right location, but at the right time, as I mentioned. So figuring out, I mentioned the placemat earlier, what does HR need to support from a service delivery perspective over the next 12 months? And then what are we doing to enable it, A, but B, communicate and enable the workforce to take advantage of?
Yeah, and I mean, another question that came in, I think, is interesting, and we know it because we just added a full capability within LeapGen to help organizations with this. But The question becomes, if I can't get funding for a full-time resource, what do we do?
A full-time resource for what?
Marketing.
Sorry. Oh, for marketing. If you can't, then contract for it. If beg, borrow, steal from your marketing group. Upskill the people you have. I mean, if you're undertaking an HR service delivery, initiative as an example, chances are you're going to be freeing up someone's time because they're not digging into the transaction as much. I know plenty of good HR business partners that are great communicators, great storytellers. They know what to do with data. There's the potential to maybe upskill some of those folks to do it. That's obviously not an ideal situation to be in, though. If you can't afford it, I mean, different organizations can find success with different things, but contracting and cross training are the ones that come to mind. Yeah,
it's huge. I mean, one of the things we're going to do from a Leap Academy standpoint is start to offer some of that training to people on marketing, because it's it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, there's another question that I love here that ties to that kind of is, how do we optimize delivery of marketing so the message gets consumed? Tough in this era or age of information overload. You want to take that, Mike, or I can definitely start with it too.
Sorry, the question was what?
How do we optimize delivery of marketing so the message gets consumed?
Well, I think some of it boils down to developing a strategy, right? So as I mentioned earlier, trying to define what your workforce segments are, what the personas are, what their technographics are, what their work environment's like, where they tend to consume information, not just HR related information, but what environments are they working, on a day-to-day basis. You've got folks that are out in the field potentially that are constantly on their mobile devices. Then you've got R&D teams who are constantly in front of screens and using Slack to communicate with one another. So I think it really starts there. And for every organization, it's going to be somewhat different just based on their workforce segments and the type of work that they do and how they, where they're living their work lives in general.
Yeah, no, and I think the other thing that's really tied to that question is, the basics of marketing. Basics of marketing are going to where the people are. And unfortunately, in today's workplace, they're all over the place. If we look about the definition of marketing, it's actually thinking about how do we get people. It's the management and the construct of communicating, delivering, and exchanging value. That's marketing. So how do we do that? We have to understand, like Mike said, where our people are, what they're doing, and then how do I deliver it in a way? I mean, I 2 weeks ago, and someone's going to laugh at this, I was in an enterprise that we're working with, excuse me, and they had something above the urinals in the men's room. Now I don't know what they have in the women's room, but but in the men's room that said potty talk, POTTY, potty talk, and it was funny. It was interesting. It was all marketing from why is it valuable to work here? Communications about what's going on in the organization, things like that. Now, there's a part of me that's like, well, why don't you do that online? But at the same time, creative, and they're going to where people are, right? Which is the restroom. So, it's not always going to be electronic that's going to work. I mean, we've done this for a long time. If you think back to the era of mouse pads, some of you may still use a mouse pad. I'm going to get some grief for that one, I know. But, mouse pads that had marketing on it, we're always, Mike's looking for one. We're always trying to look at where people are and how do we get our message in front of them in a way that makes sense. And that's a key component of this.
Yeah, I think another,
go ahead. Yeah.
I guess to take the potty example to the opposite end of the spectrum, it's who's delivering the message. So whether it's a poster or a video, getting those ambassadors, typically influencers in the organization. We discussed earlier, and some comments came in that were just panelist related, that we're speaking to the idea of we apply marketing to recruiting, and then once people are on board, it kind of stops. But successful recruiters are often the ones that are leveraging their employees and former employees as ambassadors of the organization to recruit in. The same is true when it comes to delivering messages to the existing workforce on using something, whether it's a new, goal setting, goal management process, or some collaboration tool, or take advantage of these benefits. The voice of customer. Some of the best organizations out there will take in, voice of the customer research, so to speak, through pulse surveys and the like. But then what are they doing with it? And to actually say, okay, we're now rolling out these new benefits related to family care, because we've heard from a number of you that you're of the demographic that you're starting families for the first time. We're in a mobile organization, so we've got a lot of folks that are kind of coming and going, are living in neighborhoods that they didn't grow up in. Their families are thousands of miles away. What are you doing to find backup care for your child? Things of that nature. Who are you more likely to listen to in terms of the messaging? Is it a sign above a toilet? Maybe, if that's where people are. In other instances, I think having influencers in the organization act as those ambassadors for the organization. HR may be the enabler, but the ambassadors are the ones that are going to get the message across most clearly.
Yeah, no, completely agree. I think, Mike, one other thing just real quick that I want to make sure that we hit on is the concept of doing that marketing for the future of work. And the question came in around, is this is how much of this is tied to future of work and how much of this is just day to day keeping the lights on. I mean, what you want, I mean, I'm going to answer it first. I mean, what you want to do is you want to frame this. You want to frame it in a way that gets people excited. Everyone wants to work for an organization that's forward looking, not backward looking. Everyone wants to work for an organization that's thinking about values, that's thinking about future. So how do I take my marketing and say the values of the entity are this? The value of what it is I'm trying to push out is this, not to me, but to the employee and manager. And then what should the message actually look like that I'm putting out there? You know, that course I'm teaching at HR Tech World in June in San Francisco on marketing is that. It's, guys, no matter what you do, you should write a press release that you would issue to the press that says, this is what we're doing, this is what we're announcing, here's the value of it to you, what do I do for more information? Think about that. Just think about that for a second. And anything that you roll out, any process you roll out, any technology you roll out, you should do that exercise. Get a group of people together, write the quote unquote press release, come to an agreement. And it's crazy when you do this exercise with people. I've probably done this 100 times. It's hard because one person says, well, the value is going to be better efficiency for HR. And I'm like, yeah, it is. But no one else cares about that. The value is going to be this. Yes, perfect. That is the value because you want it to talk to the person that you're talking to, not to yourself.
Yeah, can you agree more?
Any other questions, you guys? Any other questions that you guys have? We've covered a lot of topics. We're at 50, so we have time for a couple more maybe. A couple people. We have a dedicated marketing communications person who does all this. One of the things I think that's interesting about that comment, as some other stuff comes in, is that's awesome if they know the strategy of the function. If that person is more of a tactical, just communications person that's not tied into the strategy of the business, then it's really hard to infuse the messages of business and organizational success that we need if all that person is a communications expert and is tied to a project, not a bigger program.
Yeah. I just want to interject something really quick, kind of a disclaimer, if you will, Jason.
Yeah.
A lot of what we've been discussing is untested.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these are new concepts in HR. So I just want to make people aware that we're not, basing our thoughts, our opinions, our, quote unquote, best practices on, doing this for the past 10, 15, 20 years. Things have changed. Yeah. So a lot of what we're recommending, it's not like we've worked with a ton of HR organizations that we've, helped them make investments in these huge marketing functions, these capabilities that have moved them from, ad hoc on the marketing maturity capability model to, level 4, level 5. I don't even know what that looks like, to be honest with you. I've thought about it, but I haven't fully defined it in my own mind yet. So I just want to, let people know that it's not as though, some of these things that we're discussing, that the train has already left the station, or that there are benchmarks out there that you're already kind of missing the bar on. These are all things that are untested, which makes this a really exciting time. So for me, just in a lot of these Leap Chats, I usually leave very energized by kind of the idea of what the future is going to look like. But at the same time, I feel as though when we're answering questions at times, we may come off as we're speaking based on, a couple of decades of experience. When the fact is we're working thoughtfully with organizations. I think we know more than most, but it's not as if we're basing this on old habits and, books that we've got on the shelf.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's a really good point, Mike. And I think that, it's changing constantly. That's what makes us exciting. The quote I always use from in a number of different speaking opportunities is, when the rate of change on the outside is greater than the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. A rate of change on the outside, in this case of marketing, consumerism, experience, has now gotten to the point where it's on the outside is better than the inside. And if you ask organizations, who do you communicate better to? Your customers? Not. And when I say better, that's the key word. Who do you commit better to? Your customers or to your quote unquote workers? In most cases, it's your customers. And the sad thing about it is most of our customers are our workers in a
Yeah.
lot of cases. So, this is something we all as a community will continue to get better on. I was glad to see such a great interest in the topic. It's an area of work that I hope we can continue to shift as a community is away from old school change management tied to projects to a realization that this has to be an always on model. Cool. Well, Mike, I think we're done. I think we got through our questions. We got through the polls.
Yeah.
We've met the enemy, as someone just texted. Now our job is to go conquer. So we'll continue to put it out there. Any questions, feel free to communicate through any of our channels, and look forward to catching you on the next LeapChat.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks, Jason.
Everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.